what we're finding out now is that if you look at the money that comes into membership organisations, basically the subscription income, it only really accounts for 50% of the paid down costs of keeping the lights on. So it's that simple. So subs alone will only pay for half the cost of keeping these organisations going. So that other 50% now has to come from somewhere else.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Rich, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. It'd be amazing just to hear a quick intro to you, who you are, what you do, and a bit about your experience and background within the membership sector as well.
No, good to be with you today. So basically, my name's Rich, and I am the CEO of the MemberWise network. So we are a network that represents around 8,000 professionals who work for roughly 2,500 membership organisations. They're at all different ends of their career, so from administrators right up to chief executives and board members. And in terms of the topics from membership through to PR, communications, CPD, professional standards, all those different departments. And the types of organisations, they vary between professional bodies, trade associations, and other types of organisations. So from political parties through to private members clubs in the centre of London, Manchester, really, really diverse audience. And we've been running for just about sort of 10 years. My background is that I have been responsible for membership from coordinator level to director level. And I have worked for organisations including the British Dental Association, the Royal College of GPs, and the Royal College of Psychiatrists and the Law Society. So very much I've done the day job, been responsible for membership, but also been responsible for creating learning programs, creating assessment programs, and very much being responsible for the learning and assessment of learning for members. So hopefully I get the topic quite well, and thank you for inviting me to join you today.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And there's a few names there you mentioned, and we obviously at Titus, which I think is why we'd come across MemberWise in the first instance, work with a few organisations who are part of your membership and part of your organisation as well. So Royal College of GPs, Royal College of Surgeons, and a few others that you mentioned there as well. From, I suppose, one kind of founder to another, what was the big push for you in terms of starting MemberWise, and how did the organisation come about in the early days?
So one of the things that I found was a real challenge early on when I was working as a coordinator and moved from a coordinator to a manager. I suppose within membership, you've kind of got your comms and marketing that's similar to other organisations, but within membership and certainly with CPD and learning, I wanted to meet people like me who were doing jobs like me, and I wanted to see what good looked like. I think that was the basic. The other 50% of it was I also wanted to find out if there were providers out there who really understood membership and could help me deliver what I needed to deliver for the membership organisation that I was working for. So it was actually almost like a sad hobby, if I'm honest with you. I used to do the day job and literally would just fly into, I don't know, somewhere in central London and do a seminar in my lunch break, and then I'd kind of come back to do the day job. So it was never actually meant to be a full-time role. And so over the last decade, I suppose I've kind of met people like me, typed by about 8,000. And actually we've worked out as a network that there was a real requirement for a place to go to ask no such thing as a stupid question from a membership and learning perspective. I think that's probably the best way to describe it. And people naturally don't fall into membership. People naturally fall into membership. It's not one of those things where you go out in your career to think, right, I'm going to go and work for a membership body. It's almost like a sort of secret society, I suppose. And once you get into it, if you're a people person, you very much get on with it. You like it because you're dealing with people, you're dealing with members and stakeholders and that kind of thing. So it's a very diverse day job. And in the nicest possible way, there's nothing really like it. So as a network, we're quite unique in that we're providing this place to go where people can really understand it. And like you say, Titus has been to our conferences and our events and our webcasts. So it's quite a unique group of people. It works really well. And, we have really positive feedback from our members. And equally, as a free network, we have to literally have really good relationships with providers. And it's really nice to surface those providers that can help membership bodies do what they need to do.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. So one of the bits, and we can talk a little bit more about some of the outputs of MemberWise and some of the benefits to organisations might be part of that community as well. But one of the things you'd pushed out recently was that financial benchmarking report, and you were looking at organisations' financial landscape, expenditure trends, etc., etc. So it'd be good maybe just to jump into that and maybe summarise some of the key elements of the report. What were some of the key insights and some bits perhaps that you think our audience should be aware of as well?
Yeah, so basically, to start from the beginning, so the MemberWise network, what we've done is we've compiled a list of the 100 biggest membership organisations in the UK. So they are what we call the Influence 100, and in that list are membership bodies that have pretty much more than about 50,000 members. That's the kind of the rule, and right up to, I think, like the likes of the National Trust and the National Union of Students, you got millions of members. And so what we've done with that list, we compile it every year, we check the figures, we make sure that everything's robust. But what we also do is work with an accounting firm called Price Bailey. And what they do is they put the annual reports of those 100 membership organisations through a process of analysis. So we look at expenditure, we look at income, we look at governance, we look at EDI, all those different things, and actually come up with kind of trends within the current year, and also trends that we'll be looking at previous years to actually create a bit of a view of the landscape of what it looks like with those organizations. So that gives you the actual audience that we actually use within that benchmarking report. So as I say, the 100 biggest membership organizations in the UK. So once we've got those figures, as I say, we look into what's happening, and there's always a mixed pattern. It's almost like the good, the bad, and the ugly. So we report about organisations that have actually flown up the list, so new entrants to that list, but also we look at what's going on financially. So this year, one of the biggest things that we found out, and it's quite interesting. So when membership bodies, I suppose, if you go back 50, 100 years, whatever, they would have literally had, right, this is our membership. They pay this annual membership fee, and this is the money that we get, and this is what we spend, and we do what we do. Simple as that. But what we're finding out now is that if you look at the money that comes into membership organisations, basically the subscription income, it only really accounts for 50% of the paid down costs of keeping the lights on. So it's that simple. So subs alone will only pay for half the cost of keeping these organisations going. So that other 50% now has to come from somewhere else. Now, you include, I don't know, the cost of living crisis, the cost of doing business, inflation, Brexit, all of those things. And we're in a much more complicated environment to do what we need to do. And a simple answer would be, well, you just put your membership fees up. But we all know if you do that, you're going to lose loads of members. It's as simple as that. So that's not an option. So what we're seeing as a trend is that membership bodies that are doing good things, they're taking more of a portfolio approach to membership. And what that means is that they are looking at things like revenue generation from online learning, revenue generation from online assessment, perhaps more commercial opportunities with sponsorship of providers that work within those sectors. And the other thing that it might be is, for example, looking at new revenue streams that are perhaps value-added benefits of membership. So you get membership obviously in return for your annual fee, but perhaps you actually bolt on things to that membership. So they're getting money from other places, and that's the biggest thing we're seeing. The other thing that we're seeing with the organisations that are not taking that approach is very much they're starting to dip into their reserves. Which it's a short-term thing that'll kind of get you out of the shtuck for now, but it's not something that's sustainable in the medium to long term. So, that's something. What we're also seeing is actually an increase in investment for trade bodies in online learning, which is really lovely to see. So whereas professional bodies, it's been their bread and butter for online learning for quite a while now, trade bodies perhaps have more of a face-to-face approach with learning, which was maybe more traditional. So we're starting to see that shift, which is really interesting. And equally through the report, we're also seeing a move from perhaps what would have been bespoke solutions, that type of thing, to more industry standard platforms. So we're starting to see membership bodies use more industry standard product rather than building it themselves. And that build it yourself hangover, if that's the word to use, very much came from organisations kind of seeing themselves as software houses, which again, membership bodies are membership bodies, not software houses. So it's actually much better that we work with industry standard providers who are continuing to invest in their solutions. And obviously, with organizations like yourselves, you're in much better position to be able to kind of create those platforms than we are. So that's a bit of a shift that we've seen also.
Yeah, brilliant. No, thank you for that. And it'd be on that topic then of e-learning, digital learning. It'd be good just to know, I suppose, in practice, how are these organizations using the software, whether that's directly for the members and kind of upskilling, CPD learning, etc., or for some of the kind of e-commerce and income generating activities. And there may be a couple of either good examples or case studies you can share where you've seen people do amazingly well, and then perhaps we could talk a little bit about just what does the future look like as well in terms of all things e-learning within the membership space.
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of the membership bodies that are doing really good things with learning, I mean, if you've got I suppose like a purist approach to it, you've got the kind of the academic side of things. So very much you've got the really rich content, the learning outcomes, you've got the delivery of online learning. There's been much more of a move to make it more bite-sized. The idea of actually including, kind of, I suppose the kind of the assessment element to learning in that bite-sized format, which is always quite interesting to see. Where I think the membership sector has not struggled, but has kind of had to find a bit of a balance, has been in actually making that learning pay. So I think in the more traditional audiences. So if I give you an example, like there's 24 medical royal colleges in the UK, and they're representing all sorts of professions within medicine. So as a profession, they were very used to actually having quite, shall we say, expensive courses, but willing to pay for those courses. And actually a lot of the CPD was kind of mandatory. So they had to do it to actually continue to do what they do for the day job. So very simple, you're a dentist, you've got to do your CPD, you've got to get it done one way or another. You'll pay for the actual experience, and then that's it. But the actual sums of money involved in that are potentially quite lucrative. And so you've got a lot of commercial learning providers in there. So membership bodies very much have been trying to kind of get into that space of actually, I suppose if there's a pie to be had, trying to actually get that as the gold standard of learning. And that's what differentiates a lot of membership bodies, in that they can be that. And that's what differentiates them perhaps from the commercial learning providers. Move into other professions that are perhaps more price sensitive, maybe not as well paid, whereas learning is something that's voluntary, it's not something that's mandatory. That's where the challenges start to come. And because it's voluntary, you've got to have people who want to learn in the first place, which kind of narrows the audience down. But equally, you've got to have, for example, from commercial perspective, whereas, talking about medicine, you'd have solution providers that are obviously trying to get their kit into, say, hospitals or doctors' surgeries or dentists, whatever. There's a real reason for them to invest in the learning so that they can get their product out there. Within the organizations where perhaps it's not so, it's more challenging. So what we've actually seen from that perspective is that we've had to get cost-effective solutions in there, and also working with providers to actually help to either subsidize it or to actually make it happen in the first place. You asked about some good examples, and one of the examples I always bring to the table is what the Royal Institute of British Architects did. That they worked very closely with providers who actually provide solutions or link to architecture. So not particularly sexy sort of subject, but Tarmac, for example. It's a company that produces what it produces, and it's a solution that can be used by architects or within the building process. So it's no surprise that they are actually investing in learning opportunities for members who are architects. It puts their brand out there. It means that the learning opportunity can take place. So I'd definitely say that that's a good example of how you've got membership body, solution provider, member, kind of all working together in a bit of a kind of microclimate to deliver on that online learning process. And the smart membership bodies that we see, they're taking that approach, because if you've got commercial input, I mean, don't get me wrong, you don't want to compromise on the actual learning experience. You don't want to actually turn it into a sell rather than a learning experience. But the ones that get the mix right seem to be doing a really good job at the moment.
Brilliant. And then in terms of that investment piece as well, where do you kind of stand on that? Or either personally in your opinion, or in terms of what you've pulled from the report, where are you seeing some of the best success stories from an investment perspective? Because we work in the world of providing the platform typically. Sometimes we'll do the content piece, occasionally we'll do integrators, and we've got like e-com plugins and all that kind of stuff. And now I know in terms of what we provide and some of our customers, some will pay a few £1,000s, some will pay a few £100,000, depending on what their requirements are and how many people it's going out to. But in terms of that like investment level required, and or if you were to make a case for or against investment into digital learning, what's kind of your stance on that, and or what was pulled out of the report and the findings from that?
So one of the things that we looked at was the actual spending on tech, and when I say that, it's a very much a wider piece. So you've got the infrastructure, you've got the website, you've got community, you've got learning management systems, you've got content managers, all the whole piece. That's kind of where we're sort of talking in general. And we found that last year, out of those 100 biggest membership bodies in the UK, they were spending a supplementary £500 million on tech. So the theme there is that there is investment in that infrastructure, and certainly the kind of the landscape has changed somewhat. So if we go wind back to, for example, COVID, you had a lot of membership bodies offering very traditional learning opportunities for members. So, very much you would go to a specific physical location, you would have presentations, you would kind of do X, Y, and Z, and then you would get, a certificate for attending. In terms of the reality of what happened with COVID, it pushed everybody online. So you had a few organizations literally pulled the shutters down Armageddon. Most organizations actually looked at ways that they could get around it. So you've got very much quick and simple online learning opportunities via Zoom, via Teams. They took everything virtually. And then a lot of organizations invested very quickly in tech that would enable them to provide more structured learning opportunities. You sort of fast forward that a couple of years, and what we found is that those who have took a belts and braces approach to it perhaps worked out that they needed something more sophisticated to be able to deliver on that learning piece. A number of organizations probably found they invested in the wrong technologies, and are now actually working out that they need to actually work with more industry standard platforms. And so what we've got is a sector that is trying to integrate. So you've got very much the kind of the web piece, you've got the learning management side of things around it, perhaps the assessment side of things as well. But very much these organizations are looking at taking a more integrated approach, and obviously being smarter with the analytics. And I know I was talking to one of the providers today, about that, the amount of knowledge that these organizations have got, the amount of information that's there, it's pretty crazy. So, this use of artificial intelligence to kind of start to either signpost relevant content or learning, or the ability to actually draw content from existing resources that might be, a webcast that was done 2 years ago, or a recording of a keynote presentation that was done 6 months ago. They're only now starting to actually draw that content together and have the ability to be able to provide that as a really rich benefit for membership. So yeah, in terms of where we're going, it's moving. It's very much sort of the face-to-face element, of course, is there. The online element of it is still there, but much more of a sort of sophisticated use of that information to provide a more richer learning opportunity. That's what we're seeing.
Brilliant. And then kind of last question in and around this, but would be that content creation piece. And I think through the conversations we've had, and maybe this is one of the reasons we started out with the LMS and then kind of looked at the content thereafter. The world of content is just absolutely huge in terms of all of the off-the-shelf offerings, the custom content houses you can work with, or of course, your internal instructional designers. Again, it'd be good to both maybe some of the challenges within the market and within the sector, but again, some of the success stories, or what does the future look like for that content creation piece? Because it's all well and good having the most beautiful house on the street, but if you've not got any furniture in there, it's not all that usable. So it'd be good just to hear your thoughts on content and how are people doing that currently, and how perhaps you see that changing over the coming years as well.
Yeah, so there's definitely a move from bespoke to industry standard product. That's a clear change that we've seen, and it's gone from something like 60% take up of industry standard product to about 80 or so percent. So there is a shift to move to these products. I mean, that's the first thing. And obviously the investment that's going into those products is far beyond anything that these organizations could do internally. So it makes sense. I suppose that's the first thing to say. In terms of membership bodies as well, they really do need to, certainly with the professional bodies and trade associations, you've got the gold standard of what good looks like. I think that's fundamentally something that's always been there, but it's making that good, or that kind of learning of good, accessible. And again, it's probably moved from perhaps a focus on the southeast and London to a much more kind of accessible online platform or viewing of that content, which has changed. So that's good to see. And it's also opening up international markets as well for these organizations, because that accessible content can obviously be repackaged, resold. And certainly with the technology that we've now got, the actual ability to translate content into local dialects within other countries that perhaps were inaccessible in the past, that's something that we're starting to see. And with the use of AI, enabling that, that's good. I mean, we do need to be a bit cautious. We need to make sure we get it right. But that's something that we're starting to see change. So that's good. And the cost of being able to do these things is on one element, it is reducing down. So these technologies are becoming more accessible to us. But the cost of doing business has obviously gone up. And that's a wider piece that membership bodies need to look at. But the kind of the commercialization of learning, or the expansion of learning to new markets, is definitely part of the mix that's needed to keep these organizations moving forward. And these organizations where, when I started out in membership, it was all about getting more new members, get more new members, and very much the analogy of like a leaky bucket. That kind of was you pour water in the top and keep pouring water in the top, but if there's holes in it, it's not going to fill up. So the market moved to focusing on engagement and retention, where again, if you think of that analogy of a leaky bucket, you've got corks or something, you're putting stoppers in those holes and the water starts to rise, which is fantastic. Now we're getting to a position where actually that kind of bucket is full, and we need to either get a bigger bucket, or we need to actually do something to make it overflow just to be able to stand still. And that's where we are as a market. And so when it comes to learning and assessment and online learning, that is very much part of that portfolio piece that we need to get right in order for us to do what we do and be good at what we do and do a really good job for our members. It's as simple as that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So nearly time to wrap up. Just ahead of that, is there anything that perhaps we've not covered so far that you think are important messages that you want to share, whether it's tied into digital learning within membership organizations, or some of your learnings over the past X number of years, or what's coming up, or do you feel like we've covered quite a chunk there?
The main thing that I've seen over the years has been very much a move, and what it started off at when I was in the early stages of my career, like when it came to CPD and learning. Start again. When it came to CPD and learning at the start of my career, very much the focus was on inputs. So you had points-based systems, you had hours of learning. It was very much about what you're putting into it that actually meant that learning piece was done. The market then started to move into kind of outputs. So very much the kind of, I went to a lecture and learned how to swat up on X, Y, and Z. Therefore, that's my learning, and that's it. That's good. Tick, tick, tick. Then the market moved from outputs to outcomes. So actually it was kind of, well, I learned something, I know how to do it, and it's made a real difference. So whether I've made a patient better, whether I'm a business that's making more money, whether I'm saving on costs, my learning actually delivered on something, and actually that something is a positive outcome, whether it's the health of the general public or making more money, whatever. That shift, that fundamental shift has been there. And we're now in this kind of still in this outcome based. So, why am I learning this? What's it doing? Why would I learn it? And what do I get from it? That piece is now fundamentally in place. And organizations that are providing learning opportunities, they really do need to work out what that looks like in order to make things better for the members. And the ones that are doing that are really getting positive outputs and outcomes from it, because their members are actually seeing really good things come from their learning. Whereas before, certainly if you're looking at inputs and outputs, it's very much a kind of transactional type of experience. So that's definitely the move that we've seen, and we definitely would advocate. And as I say, much more this kind of shift of sort of face to face and online, this blended approach is obviously the way forward. And I think the next steps really is just to make that much more accessible. And as I say, using industry standard product, but giving the learning opportunities in a format that will meet the next generation of members' requirements. And certainly when we're seeing the next generation of members come forward, they don't want a clunky experience. They want to learn quick. They want to learn fast. They want to be able to do what they need to do. And if they don't think something's relevant, then they'll just bin it off. And you don't want to be in that space where they're binning you off. You really want to be really providing that positive experience. And that's, I think, where we're going. So as a network, I mean, we provide support for professionals who are responsible for member learning. And we do that through an online community called the CPD Intelligence Group. It's a whole kind of closed environment of membership people who are responsible for learning. So we've got peer-to-peer advice. And equally, the conferences, the webcasts that we do, the webcasts are free, the conferences are paid for. If there's if there's professionals who want to learn what good looks like and want to meet people like them, that's what we're here for, and that's what we do.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rich. So final piece, where can people find out more information about MemberWise and or yourself? Where are the best places for them to look?
So really simple and straightforward, memberwise.com. If you go to the website, you find everything that you need to know about the network and the benefits of membership. And as a free network, please do dig in. And if you like what you see, do share it with colleagues.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining, Rich. Absolute pleasure.
That's all right. How's that? Was that okay?